Welcome to the Rise Network podcast show, a podcast dedicated to help you reach your dream lifestyle through investing in real estate. We're going to be sitting down with new, intermediate, and experienced investors to talk all about real estate and how it has changed their lives. If you're looking to scale your portfolio or even just get into real estate investing, you're in the right place. Make sure to tune in. Hello, everyone. You are listening to the Rise Real Estate Investing Podcast with your host, Austin Ye, and Mayu is not joining us today in today's preamble. Once again, we decided to film this preamble last minute, and last minute things do come up. So you're just going to have to deal with me for the next 2 or 3 minutes, but don't worry, I'll keep this short. Just to give you guys an update on what's going on in the real estate world for myself, the flip project that I know I constantly talk about on this podcast is finally wrapping up. We finished the staging and we spent about $6,000 in staging it. The reason being is because the actual square footage of the main living area of the house is humongous. I would say easily over 1,200 square feet. So a lot of people can't visualize what they're going to do with that space. So staging actually goes a very long way, especially when we're talking about flipping a property, right? Like you want to target people's emotional needs. And some people, when they walk into property, they would imagine, oh, I can't wait for our kids to do XYZ in this space or for us to enjoy ABC space because you have the furniture out there. And now they're just kind of visualizing in their head how they're going to enjoy the space with their family. So touching on the emotions, that's a key point in getting the highest value in the property. And we went for targeting what's in trend in design in the design world. I'm not a very design savvy person, so Myuren Chanthirakumar, my partner on this flip, has been handling that pretty much, and he follows HGTV, like all of these other designers, reads like Architect Digest and all of these other magazines, so he's pretty in the loop with what's trendy and what's not, so that we took inspiration from all of the modern design and put that together when creating our flip product. Very proud of the final product that we do have. We also are working on getting an appraisal just in case you want to decide to refi it and keep it as an Airbnb, but at least we have options. Our private money is actually expiring at the end of this year, so it's a great time to list, hopefully get rid of the property and have someone close within 30 or 45 days, but we'll see. I'll give you guys an update on that. In terms of my 8-plex renovation, which again is partnered with Myron, we're going ahead and gutting some of the units. We didn't plan to gut the units. We just found that underneath the existing flooring were 3 other floors, followed by the subfloor, which is all rotted and molded out. So unfortunate, obviously that's going to add like a couple $1,000s to our renovation budget. You just got to expect these things in real estate at this point. When I heard about it, I didn't panic or anything like that. I feel like I'm just very used to it, for better or for worse. But that's the world of real estate investing. Even a home inspector can't catch everything. When you start tearing things down, breaking things down, you're able to really see what the house is built out of and if the house has been neglected or not, which in this case, obviously, this house has been neglected. There are a lot of things that we didn't budget for when we started tearing walls down. We found that, okay, we need to end up replacing it. But yeah, I mean, my week has been pretty hectic, a lot of fires to be putting out, but also exciting because we're wrapping up the flip project. Nonetheless, we're going to get into today's episode because I could keep on going on and on about my week, but I'm sure you guys don't want to hear me bitch. So we'll jump into today's episode. In today's podcast, we have Myron, and Myron is a member of the Rise Network community, and he also hosts our monthly Q&A where he interviews an expert in real estate investing and answers any questions that our audience might have, and he has on a specific topic. This Monday, we have Myuren Chanthirakumar going on the live Q&A. So make sure to register and check it out on our Facebook page if you haven't already. But nonetheless, we have Myron in today's episode. He's a phenomenal investor, another young investor, got started off only 2 to 3 years ago, and he's grown a portfolio of, I believe, what's now 20 units. And his portfolio is comprised of properties in both Windsor and Sudbury. And the best thing about it is that he had less than $30,000 saved when he got started in investing, but was still able to scale his portfolio at such a rapid pace by taking advantage of creative financing strategies, which we get all into about in this topic. So how do you have limited capital but are still able to scale your portfolio? If you ever had that question, you do not want to miss this episode out. Make sure to tune in. Hope you guys enjoy it. We are joined with our very special guest, Myron. Myron, how's everything going, man?
I'm doing well. How's it going with you guys?
It's
Doing
good.
good, man.
It's a
Doing
long
good.
time in the making. Like we bothered this guy for how many months to jump on? He just turned us down.
Yeah, he's being super humble. He's like, I gotta achieve something first. And now everyone that's listening today will go, what the fuck? Like, you could have been on way long ago. So for anyone that doesn't know, I'll quickly just say that Myron's part of the Rise Network team. He's a moderator in the Facebook group. He also runs our Facebook Lives that happen generally once a month, where he interviews different people that are essentially part of the real estate transaction process, right? So anyone from lawyers, appraisers, brokers, a whole different amount of number of people. So Myron, why don't you introduce yourself a lot better than what I just did there?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Myron, born in Canada. I've been living just north of Toronto in the city of Vaughan, basically all my life. Real estate was always something that I've always wanted to get into. I loved looking at real estate growing up, but I never really understood the fundamentals. I was raised by, typical middle-class family. My parents came to Canada in the 1980s to provide myself and my siblings a better lifestyle. And yeah, and as I got older, of course, education was a big part of being born in a middle-class family, because they're trying to give you the lifestyle that they didn't have the luxury to have when they grew up, right? So that was essentially how the mindset that I had. And once you got into university, it was more of, you need to try building a good lifestyle. But once you get that first paycheck, you realize that it doesn't really correlate to the lifestyle that you want to have. And that's essentially how I transitioned into real estate investing. I started in 2019. And on the side, my full-time job is working at a global commercial real estate advisory company. So that pretty sums up like what I do on a high level.
So wait, how old are you right now?
I'm 26.
26. So 2019, you would have been, what is that, 2024? Okay. So Austin, when did you buy your first property?
I bought it like 23, late 23.
Okay. Austin just had to.
I gotta specify, because I can't let Myron outperform me right now.
So I guess what I'm wondering is most people don't realize right away, right? Like you because you said there that you get your first paycheck, you realize that you want to leave your day job, or that it's not really what's gonna make you wealthy in the long run, right? I don't think most people realize right away. I think they kind of climb a corporate ladder for at least a couple of years, or they aspire to climb a corporate ladder. So what was it that kind of pushed you towards real estate?
So the first thing was, don't get me wrong, like when I got my first paycheck, the mindset you have is that you want to blow your money. You work so hard. You feel like you just achieved a big milestone graduating from university or college. So I started working, and then it came to a point where I wanted to buy an investment property, and the first thing you see is the condominium, right? Like that's like the mindset that everyone has, the pre-construction condominium. And it was the one in Vaughan by the TTC, Vaughan Metropolitan Center. I think they only extended it late in 2017. And it was a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condo for $585,000 with parking included. Back then it was a lot of money, but looking now, like it's definitely a sweet deal. But it was a 20% down payment that required about $120,000 with everything included. And my mindset then was like, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to save $2,000 a month, and that's basically how I'm going to get started. And this is like no education in terms of how real estate investing, the fundamentals of real estate investing, or following anyone on social media. So I actually went on a 10-day, actually put my deposit down, and you have a 10-day cooling period. And on the 9th day, my dad, my sister, we talked about it, and they just think that it was too much I'm giving up on for a project like this. That means like no traveling, not having a good time, saving $2,000 a month. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm never going to be able to buy real estate. And I was going to buy like a coupe. I was looking at the Lexus RC350, and
you can't get a house, so you get a car.
I was like, that was the mindset. I'm like, you know what? Like, that's it. I'm done. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to buy real estate. Like, the only way you're going to get it is if your parents are rich and they're going to give you money. So I literally went to see the car, and it was like $34,000. I'm like, you know what? I have $34,000. I'm just going to do it. But after the conversation I had with my parents, they're like, you know what? We'd rather have you do buy real estate, but we can lend you money as long as you pay it back, right? And then I was like, okay, so this is another opportunity. So for me, I need to buy something under market value. So that's when I went on the map. And back then in 2019, the golden city was Windsor. Like you look at the purchase price and it kind of rings a bell. And that's what kind of led me there. That was what I was pre-approved for. And that's how I got started. So if you want, I can break down my first property if that's how you guys want me to get started.
Before we break down that first property, what I'm curious is, so you were a commercial appraiser during all of this time as well, right? And you were still looking at things like condominiums as an investment.
So when I got started, I just started working for an appraisal company. So before that, I was working in the commercial real estate industry on something called the Global Occupier Services. And then I really wanted to get into valuation. So when I got there, I was actually doing appraisals then. But when you're doing the appraisals on properties, well, I do commercial specifically. So a lot of them are within the 10 million, the 100 million range, because we do a lot of big portfolios. So the mindset was only the rich can do it, right?
Okay, so that actually kind of supplied that mindset of like, you can't get into it just looking at these valuations. Gotcha.
The rich could do it. We didn't really do a lot of the multifamily on a smaller scale, like a 5-6 unit building. It was always like a 100 unit multifamily building, like a portfolio across Canada. So that's basically our clientele for our company. So that's why my mindset was like, you know what, this is something that I'm not going to be able to achieve. But when I had the opportunity to borrow money with the money that I've already had saved, I was like, you know what, this is my foot through the door. Like, let me just take the risk and let me do it and I'll figure it out.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So you found your way into Windsor. Did you go on the MLS off market? Yeah, let's talk through exactly the details of the first deal, because I always find that's the most interesting, because that's where people tend to make the most mistakes and oversee a lot of things. And there's a lot of learning lessons from there.
Of course. So I've never been to Windsor before then. I think I've only went there when I was trying to get to Detroit, but we never really stopped in the city. So I went online. Number one thing I did was basic appraisal thing is economic foundation. Like, what is the population? What are the demographics? The university, and a lot of this was showing strong fundamentals. So I was like, you know what, with the appreciation from 2016 to 2018, it was quite good. In 2019, from what I remembered, it started increasing. Like, there was a significant growth in 2019 before the significant boom. So in 2019, I already thought it was too late. But in 2020, I was like, you know what, I definitely got in at a good time before the peak.
So you got in at the end of 2019, right?
October 2019.
I remember everyone thought the market was just like, didn't make sense then. And it just starts to more and more as we go on. It's like, it makes less sense. It makes less sense, but it's just still heating up.
Right. Yeah. And that's how it was. So I went, and then every property I went to, back then when open house was a major thing. And now it's just starting to get back to normal. I went to every open house. So what I did was I went to any prices that were ranged from 199 to 350, but 300,000 was what I was able to afford. But I just wanted to see what people were willing to pay. So somebody who was in the 199, what they were willing to pay, and somebody in the 300s, like, what are they willing to pay for the quality of houses? But, you get to Windsor and you see things are listed at 199, but they don't really sell at 199. They sell in the low 300s, right? Or the high 200s. So I was like, you know what? I do not want to pay market value for something, because for me, the rule was I had about $10,000 to saved up, and I had a $40,000 line of credit that I initially applied for when I wanted to get that condominium. So I still had that available. My parents were like, we'll give you 40,000. And it was basically, they were going to provide it to me as a gift to close on the property. And I was going to close on it and then use my line of credit to pay them back after closing. Because at then I didn't really understand about private money, how to close on a property. This was my first thing, like no guidance at all, other than, of course, my dad. So there was a property listed in South Walkerville by the hospital, listed at $299. It's been on the market for maybe a month and a half. And the reason why it was on the market was essentially because it was listed at asking price. And the seller was from Vancouver, so he didn't really understand the fundamentals in terms of the price mechanism. So I spoke with a listing agent, and I didn't have a real estate agent myself because I didn't want to be tied down to one agent that I had no relationship with. And the listing agent of that property is the one that I use in Windsor now, because we were able to build a good relationship. And he was like, he advises clients saying that it should be listed at, 249, 199, but he didn't list it, and now it's stuck at 299. But the notion in the market is, as the property is on the market for weeks and it doesn't go through offer presentation, there's just like a vibe saying that there's something wrong with the property. So it didn't really get a lot of attention. I came in that week, I checked out the property. They were going to reduce the listing price to 249. And before they did that, I went and negotiated down to like 257, 500. And that's how I did it. So I closed on the property 20% down. I was trying to do 20% down, and then I use my line of credit to pay my parents off. And that's when I was like, you know what, private money, like if I can do this on a bigger scale, this is something that I could significantly grow. And that property was appraised at 300,000 a couple of months later, but COVID hit. I applied in February, but it was only appraised in June because a lot of the banks in March kind of shut down. So everything was so slow. So it was basically COVID appraisal because they were using comparables in May and April. So as they appraised it at, I think 300 or 301,000, and I got all my money back. And it was basically—
You didn't do any renovations on that house?
No, just minor stuff, maybe like putting a doorknob and stuff. I put a new home.
Was it a single family or a duplex?
Single family home, all brick, turnkey.
And this is in the student rental area, if I'm not mistaken, Curry, right?
No, it's in South Walkerville.
South Walkerville. You had another one in Curry.
Yeah, I got that last November, but this one's South Walkerville by the hospital. And I started without having good tenants. Like I chose the tenant that paid the most, wanted to pay the most amount of money, which was $2,000. Even though the market was $1,800, I was like, damn, like $2,000. My mortgage was about like $700. And I'm like, this is serious cash flow. And we kind of stopped paying. Once COVID hit, even the month before, they stopped paying. And I didn't really know how to screen tenants. And I essentially lost, actually broke even though they paid, I think 4 of the 8 months that they were there. The additional $1,000 that I was making kind of covered the loss of month of rent that I didn't receive. But I definitely learned a lot. They were selling drugs out of my house. From what I knew, when COVID hit, you couldn't even visit the property. And she kind of threatened me that, if you come, like, you're not allowed. She said she worked at the hospital. She didn't even work at the hospital. She forged everything. So it was definitely, it was definitely a learning process. But since then, I've never had a tenant that not pay rent. So it was definitely a good learning experience.
I think that's a big point there, right? Like, despite investing in a good area, tenant screening is still important. Just because you're in South Walkerville is considered an A area in Windsor, just because you're in an A area doesn't give you an excuse not to screen. I know this was your first property, and likewise, I've had experiences where I didn't screen too much, right? But yeah, like, and it's not always about collecting the highest rental income. Like, as you said, it's okay to forego some rental income as long as you know you're steadily going to get paid by your tenant. So that's a pretty key takeaway there.
And I had to learn the hard way. So that's basically how, and once I refinanced my property, that's when I kind of learned, okay, like this is something I want to do, because I was making, once I re-rented it for $1,800, I was still making about $500 a month after the refinance to the new mortgage. So that's when I kind of went all in. And that's when I started educating myself on like real estate, the fundamentals, and joining different mentorship groups. And I spent about, I think, $8,000 just in education during prime COVID. So in April, May, and even June.
Awesome. Okay, so that's pretty interesting because I didn't realize that. So June of 2020, you were sitting with one single family house, right?
One single family house.
And how many units are you at today?
I'm at 20 units. I started scaling as of October 2020. And since October 2020, I've bought 20 units.
So let's talk about that, because you still didn't have a lot of capital. You refied your money and you had to pay down your line of credit, right? And then you had a bit of cash left over. So let's talk about how you were able to scale that aggressively, doing it pretty much yourself.
Yeah, so no JV partners. And it started with, I got to give a big shout out to Keith Byers. They had a workshop in February 2020. My VP at work, he recommended, he went to Guelph, and Scott McGilvery and Michael Sarancini, they also went to Guelph back in the day. So he recommended me to go to it. And Darren Boros was the presenter. And, he's very articulate, very enthusiastic, and he showed some of his project. And going to that first real estate event, that's when I saw the audience, and I'm like, there's so many people who want to invest in real estate. Like, this is incredible. And I joined the workshop. So it was a 3-day workshop. It was supposed to be in person, but of course, COVID hit. It was online. And that's when they were talking about OPM, private money, vendor takebacks. And I thought vendor takebacks, I see it at work, but you're looking at $1 million deals, $1 billion real estate deals. So you always think it has to be on a larger scale. You never think like a random seller is going to give you a vendor takeback, right? So, and then I came across Investor Mel and Dave, and they solely do OPM, private money, and vendor takeback. So I was like, you know what? If I don't have the capital, this is the way I have to go. But you have to buy the right asset in order for you to leverage it to pay your private money partners. So last summer in July, I started putting offers out there. I had no money, but I was like, you know what? If the number makes sense, I'm just going to buy it. And I literally had maybe like a couple of grand in my bank account just through my own savings, and that's it. And on top of the line of credit that I got back from, refinancing my property. So I remember my first offer was a triplex in Sudbury. Oh, before I get into Sudbury, the Windsor market started scaling, and I didn't really know anyone else who was investing in other cities. So what I did last summer, I didn't have a car. My parents dropped me off at the airport every weekend. I took the car and I went to Midland, North Bay, Sudbury, and I just went by myself, and I just went to bars, restaurants, and just sat there, talked to local people in the neighborhood, went to listings, off-market deals that were posted on Kijiji, whatever it took. I just went just to understand the market with the kind of tenant quality. And I didn't really have any idea because Sudbury back then didn't really have the online presence that it did right now. So I had to go and find those people. So once I felt connected with Sudbury, I chose Sudbury as the market. And I remember my first offer on a triplex, and I just did it. I was like, you know what, financing condition, I'm just going to do it and I'll figure it out. Of course, the numbers didn't make sense. And I couldn't even sleep that night. It was like, there was so much pressure because you're buying something, you're committing to something that you don't have the money for. But my mindset was, I will just figure it out.
We've had that before as well. Yeah. Just figure out reality.
I still sometimes have that.
Well. Yeah,
sometimes it's still pretty nerve-wracking where it's like, but yeah, anyways, continue. I don't want to interrupt you. Sorry.
No, it's all good. And that's essentially how I got started. So I backed out of that deal because I did my numbers and it didn't make sense. The listing agent is trying to convince that you can get like a 550,000 ARV. You can get like 2,500 on a 2-bedroom unit, but you got to
for a triplex.
For a triplex. So
even a single family house, 2-bedroom unit, 2,500.
Exactly.
Dude, that's like Toronto prices. You know?
Exactly. And he was trying to convince me. So I guess for me, since I was in the I do it full time, like you kind of understand the rents, like you're not as gullible. But for a new investor, you just got to make sure that dealing with a listing agent is not always the best option, because you can go to any market in Ontario, you can give any agent a call and you ask them, should you invest in the city? They're going to be like, yeah, the city is amazing. Like this is the best city, right? But they're never going to give you the ins and out of the city, like the tenant quality. So you always have to do your due diligence. And I backed out of this and I was like, you know what? Let me go try finding private money. Talking about real estate, especially in our community, isn't the biggest thing. Like you go to an event, you don't try, like, why are you talking about real estate? Like, why are you talking about money? Like, that's like the notion that a lot of people trying to put on you. For me, I didn't really have that. Like every time I went to like events with family, friends, anyone in my network, colleagues, like I just told people I just want to buy real estate. Like I had the mindset, I had the energy, like I would do the work, but I want to borrow it as private money, not as a JV. And that's just something I wanted to do first. If it didn't work out, I would 100% would have done a JV, but I was able to find capital. And I think at that time, I found about $200,000 of capital if I had the right deal. And that's when I found a 5-plex in Sudbury. And I could have started with a duplex, triplex, 4-plex. I was like, you know what? I'm going straight to a 5-plex. And that's how I understood clauses that you have to put. And I literally just figured it out. I had no coach other than the mentorship groups I was part of. But in terms of the guidance on the way, it was like, okay, like there's a unit that's going to be vacant. Like what condition am I going to put? The condition is like, okay, like the seller is required to keep the unit vacant upon closing, right? Those were things that I just figured out myself. So it was a 5-unit building, all brick, corner lot, 3 frontages. But it was kind of unique because one half of the building was like a semi-detached. So a 3-bedroom unit, 2 floors, 2 washrooms. And then the other 3 units were on one half of the building. And then the basement was a 5th unit. But on a zoning, it's a legal 4-unit building. So the highest and best use of the asset is 4 units. So in Sudbury, it's an R2-3. So one of the units are not legal. So I bought it for $540,000. It was listed at $570,000. I was the registered second offer on the property because I realized based on conversations I've had with the listing agent, the first offer was more than $600,000. I ran the numbers on it and it didn't really make any sense. So I knew that, you know what, I'm just going to go in and add asking price at $570,000 and then I'm going to negotiate it down further once it comes to me. Because I was like, no way this guy is going to get approved for financing.
Pause there. That's a very, like, I think that's a key comment that I do want to touch on is just lock it up, get your inspector, get people in there. And once someone's committed with you, if they committed a week-long process with you, they're probably going to cooperate with you just to get the deal done for you to waive the conditions.
It's essentially, it's always easier to, like, when someone has something that's like basically in their head, like done, right? They don't want to let it go. But then if you go right at them with the 540, they probably would have been like, fuck off. Right. But now when you go at them with 570 and they're like, shit, I don't want to lose this guy. Like it makes life easy. They're willing to negotiate down with you. Right.
Exactly. So, just imagine the reputation going back as, oh, the person backed out of the deal. So the next person in line's gonna be like, no, I don't want it. Like there's something that came up in the inspection report. Sorry, I thought that was an important point.
So someone backed out of the deal before you went into it, right? Is that right, Myuren?
No. So the offer was initially more than 600,000. And then I went in at 570. So I was a registered backup offer, meaning that if the first offer does not go through, it automatically, I get it under contract. So I knew the seller wanted to move. He had another property closing in October. So this was mid-August when it came to me. So I'm like, you know what? He has to sell the property because he needs the money to close on the next property. So I kind of use that as, kind of bluffing, like waiting it out and negotiating it down to 540 because I wanted one of the units vacant. I wished I forced one of the units to get vacant, but I didn't at the time. But I bumped it down to 540. But a week before closing, I got a call from the listing agent and he was like, you got some good news and some bad news. And he's like, the good news is that you got a unit vacant on closing. So I got 2 units vacant on closing, the one the seller was living in and another one. But bad news is that somebody passed away, hence why it's vacant. And I was like, okay, like from an investment perspective, obviously he was paying $430 a month and I could triple the rent. So I rented that for like $1,050 plus hydro, it's electric heating. But of course, you don't wish that upon anyone. So that was basically how I started my real estate investment journey with that 5-plex. And at the same time, there was another closing as well. I'll touch base on that. But I just wanted to touch base on the purpose of this acquisition was to legally convert it to a 5-unit building. So
but right the zoning now doesn't allow for it, right? So you're gonna get into that.
So when you're doing a commercial appraisal on this property, you're not going to be you're not going to get the highest and best use of the 5-unit building. So right now, I am in the process of doing a rezoning. The court date is in the end of October, and I've got one of the units vacant in terms of using the building permits and the rezoning of the illegal unit. I use that as leverage to get that tenant out. I had to go to the landlord-tenant board and I had to pay them 6 months cash for keys. So 6 months of rent of the current rent that they're paying. They're currently paying $950 all inclusive, and I can probably rent that for about $1,400 plus hydros because it's a unit that also has a built-in garage. So it is definitely a bit more exclusive compared to a normal 1-bedroom unit.
Hold up. I don't know if I missed something there. Okay, so you're doing the rezoning. Why did you end up at the LTB?
Because I had to get the tenant out and he didn't want to leave. So
you're doing it under the eviction for renovating or demolishing a unit or whatever that form's called, right?
Right. And he didn't want to leave. So I was like, okay, I got to go the legal grounds. I had to take it to the landlord tenant board. I already had the building permit, so I had the documentation to support during the mediation process, and he was willing to leave. So I had to pay $5,700. But one of the units on the upper floor, they're paying $830, and they wanted $50,000 cash for keys to leave. And I'm right now, I'm just sitting on it. I'm trying to use Austin tactics to get them out. So we'll see how that goes.
Hey man, maybe you got to decide to move in there for a bit. But anyways, I can say that you can, but yeah. So that sounds dope, man. So you got, at that point, you're sitting at a single family house, a 5-plex. And did you have a duplex at that point as well, or?
Yeah. So during August, so at the same time, my window agent reached out to me and said that, hey, he has 2 duplexes, one in Curry Avenue and one near the hospital in South Windsor. And I went, both of them have good bones, but required a lot of work. And I had both of them, we agreed verbally to $406,000, 2 duplexes for $406,000, all brick. And the ARV for the duplex that I had for $286,000 was like, with the appreciation, was about $500,000. But I essentially got one of the duplexes. They wanted to live in one of them, and I got it for $140,000 with a tenant that was living in the building. Like, they were selling drugs out of the property, from what the seller told me. We couldn't get the seller out, but I was like, you know what? I can keep waiting, but this deal would provide me with the return to continue to scale. right? In terms of the risk that I was taking on for 140 for a duplex. If I got the tenant out and once the renovation were done and refinanced, like I would get a lot of capital that I could use to fund a lot of renovation. I got it for 140,000 and the tenant didn't want to leave. So the seller couldn't get them out. So one day I went to Windsor and I just walked into the unit and I just treated them like a normal human being, like they were smoking, like doing drugs and whatever. And I just walked around and I just acted as one of them. Like I don't do drugs or anything, but
I just like you just picked up a line of coke and snorted it.
No, but I didn't want to make it seem like I treated them any less than who I was. I treated them like a normal human being. And literally they left 2 weeks after that. They called me 2 days later. They're like, you know what, they'll take $5,000. And I asked them, the seller was trying to give you the same amount. Like, what's the reason that, you wanted to leave when I requested it? He was like, well, the seller never really respected them for who they were. And for me, I just went in just with no expectations. Like I just explained to them that there was going to be a lot of work done on this property. And it's either you sit through this and you have to deal with the difficulties, or I can, give you some sort of financial, independence. For $5,000 for them was like a lot of money for them to move on and start a life of their own. Okay.
That's pretty dope, man. That sounds like a home run deal, right? And like whenever that home run deal is like usually a home run deal has some sort of a problem associated with it, right? And it's just, that's what we get rewarded for, right? Dealing with someone else's headache. Cool, man. So that's dope. So at that point, I guess we're sitting near the end of 2020 last year, somewhere around there. And you're at 8 units. How do you then go to 20 units? Like what have you done? Or 20 plus units? How do you what was the journey there?
I'm sorry. At this point, have most of the units been turned around, or you're still kind of working through them as you're actively acquiring?
So the only duplex that I have stabilized right now is the one I have on Curry Avenue. So that was about $100,000 in renovation. So I bought it for 140, put in about 100,000 in renovation. I used private money for that as well because I didn't have 28,000 in my account then because I just closed on a 5-unit building the month before. So I bought it for 140. So I borrowed $200,000 of private capital through one individual who funded the down payment and another buddy of mine who funded the renovation, 50% of the renovation. So 50,000, I put another 50,000, all in 100,000. I got appraised for 389 and my new mortgage was 311. So I cashed out at $260,000. That was my new amount. And of that 260, 10,000 went to the interest payments and the holding costs, and $250,000 was basically what I had sitting in my account. The $200,000 was, of course, private money. $50,000 of that was the extra capital that I made of tax-free money, the refinance. So I basically bought a property using none of my own money and made $50,000. And when I bought that to the partners that I used to fund this deal, they were like, you got a home run of a deal, and they wanted me to recycle that amount for multiple projects.
So quick question there. Your private lenders, are they balloon payments or are they monthly interest?
So when I got started, I had to convince them to give it to me. So I had to pay 6 months of interest payments in advance. So for one of them, for my buddy, I had to pay, I think it was $5,000 upfront cash, right? So technically I got, out of the 50,000, I got $45,000. The other one, I had to pay 6 months interest in advance as well for $150,000. So a lot of these I had to pay in advance because they were not, of course, it's my first time. But the way I presented it to them was the market value of the property as is was $250. If I did not do any work to it, I could easily just go to the bank, get 80% loan to value, and my new mortgage is $200,000, which is why I only borrowed $200,000 and not more than that, because it was just a no-brainer and it was 100% return on my investment. If I borrowed more than $200,000, a bit more of a risk, because if the market took a dip or I didn't want to do any work to it, it would be money coming out of my own pocket. But that's why I did not want to borrow more than $200,000. So I refinanced that, got $260,000 in May 2021. That's when I got my money back. And then I sold my Windsor property that I got in 2019. I sold it off market. I had a really amazing tenant and I did not want to kick them out because I was only renting it for $1,800. But if I were to sell it more than $380, as a buyer, they're not going to be able to maintain the property with the rental income. Mm-hmm. So I decided to sell it for about $20,000 to $25,000 in discount to keep the tenant. and I sold it and I made about $130,000 from that property. So I get a lot of people always ask, hey, like, you could have sold it more. And I'm like, you know what? We're as landlords, we're in the business of making money, but in the fact that if a tenant is willing to pay you rent always on time, they're able to take care of the property. And I forgot I owned that property. Like I always got the payment 2 weeks beforehand. The least you can do is, have them be able to continue their lifestyle. Like for that tenant, they had a kid who lived down the street. And I asked them, if we were to leave, like, what's your living situation? And they're like, hey, like, she just got divorced. She would have had to find other financial means. So that was the main reason why I just wanted to sell it. I sold it within 3 weeks for $380,000, and that capital is what I had on a lot of my real estate deals as well. So $200,000 in private money, $50,000 of the money that I made from the Curry property, as well as $130,000 of the profits I made. That's essentially how I just started banging out one deal at a time for renovations, acquisitions, and so forth. So during that time, I was networking with a lot of people. I bought a triplex off market, and then all I did was go to an agent that had a board online on the market, and I'm like, hey, this is what I want to do. Do you have anything for me? The property he was listing didn't really work. 2 weeks later, he came back with me with a triplex for $400,000, 1 unit vacant. It was purpose built. If you go on my Instagram page, it's called the Oak Street. Beautiful property, purpose built, 2 driveways, and I got it down to 380. So I actually went physically because he didn't want to go down any lower than 400,000. Bought it down by $20,000.
You think about it, that one trip saved you 20 grand. Sorry, one trip, couple hours made you 20 grand.
But do you know what? A lot of my friends were like, I can't believe you're renting a car and spending $200 for gas and renting a car just to go to Sudbury for a day. And I'm like, well, you never know what might happen, right? It's always an opportunity to go meet with the seller and making that emotional connection and just letting them know why you need the amount. So I wanted 360, of course, but 380 was what they were firmed up on. And I was like, you know what, let me negotiate on the terms. So I got vacant possession. They cleared out all the junk. They cleared out all the appliances. They were all in bad shape. So those were the things that kind of saved me about a few $100 as well as getting a vacant possession. So right now it's still under renovation because I had to extend the closing in May because the lender backed out a couple of days beforehand because the appraisal came in $70,000 below purchase price. I got it appraised again for asking price. So like I said, on the residential side, it's a hit or miss. You need to do your own due diligence as the buyer. On the commercial side, it's all a numbers game. So the risk assessment is not too far. It's not going to be a far range, right? So on the residential side, you need to be able to convince the appraiser that, hey, this is why the value is what it is. And I was able to get 380. The other property was a duplex that I actually got in December of 2020 from Austin. It was a wholesale deal. And Austin, like right now, there was actually water leaking into the basement now. So I'm $20,000 above my budget.
Oh, no.
It just came out of nowhere apparently last week. So that should have been refinanced by now, as of right now. So these are things that, unfortunately, as an investor, when you got so many properties on the go, like these are unexpected costs. But so far, I've been able to manage a lot of them. So that was the triplex and the duplex. And I'm like, you know what? I still have some money lying around. Let me still find more deals. Earlier the year in 2021, I saw a wholesale deal, a single family with secondary unit, not a legal one, but can be converted to one, was on the market to be wholesaled for $360, I believe. And I knew the deal fell through because I knew a lot of people were interested in it, but it was bad tenants. The buyer backed out, and I knew that it didn't go through. So what I did, I just reached out to the wholesaler a couple of months later, and I couldn't find the owner online. Like for me in the commercial real estate industry, we do have access to Geo Warehouse, so we can see, we can pull the title to see who owns the asset, but I couldn't find who the owner was. Reached out to the wholesaler, paid them $5,000 just to get it under contract. Had it for $330, and I got it. But what I did after getting it under contract, the wholesaler was out of the way. I renegotiated it for $340 with a 10% BTB. So I only have to put 10% down, and the property was appraised at $395,000. So I'm already $56,000 below market value, but that's just me maximizing the $130,000 I had. I'm trying to maximize it in terms of how many assets that I can buy. Because at the same time, I also wanted to buy a fiveplex for $450, and that was an off market as well, a 5-unit vacant turnkey fiveplex in Sudbury for $450,000, and I was able to get
That's unreal.
A 10% VTB. So with $100,000, I bought $900,000 worth value-wise of assets, right? But on a 20% down, you can only buy $500,000 of asset with a 20% down payment. So when people ask me like how I'm able to grow a lot, it's just maximizing the money you have into multiple properties you can. But it all comes down to negotiating the terms, the agreement, a vendor take back. Number one, when I got started in 2020, the summer, I was trying to give vendor take back deals so many times, but I wasn't presenting it to the seller the right way. I was always presenting it in a way where they're doing me a favor, but I realized that you always need to project it in terms of you're doing them a favor in terms of making passive income, deferred tax payment. They're not owning the asset, but if I were to default on the payment, they still have right to the asset based on the terms of the agreement. So those two were BTBs as well. And then right now I do have another 14 unit that I just got under contract yesterday, and I was able to negotiate another BTB of 12.7% of the acquisition price. So like I said, I don't have money, but I've been able to maximize the money that I have into multiple assets. But a lot of the repair value for these are going to be giving me a full burst. So I'll get all my money back. It's all about recycling them one asset at a time.
So let me ask you this. I know we're almost out of time here. So let me ask you one quick question, because I think you're growing your portfolio pretty fast.
Right.
But what are the pain points? Like not really what keeps you up at night. It's more so like, I think when you've got multiple renovations going, you've got multiple vacancies across the board, you've just got shit in like all different places and stuff like that. Right. Yeah. And even like just thinking about like money management, right? Like you got to watch the ins and outs, and you got to make sure your debt service and all that kind of stuff. What are your pain points, and what are you doing to like overcome them?
So right now, I've been able to budget a lot. So some of the properties, like the 5-unit turnkey property, all I have to do is lease it and refinance. I just have some exterior work that I have to do. But I'm closing it at a time where one renovation project is going to be done and it's going to close on to the next one. So like the 14 unit that I have right now is closing in February of 2022. And the triplex is closing in 2022 of January. So it's like a domino effect. Literally, that's the game. Like how to buy multiple properties, but leveraging one to buy the other. Because for me, I don't want to finish a project and go back on the market or trying to build my connection and find another property, because that's going to delay you another 90 days. So it's just recycling the money one at a time, building the right relationships. For me, I've never bought a property on the market since last October, right? Which is the fiveplex. Everything else was always off market. But I don't do door knocking. I don't do the mailing campaign. But just building relationship with contractors. For me, my contractors, they're not really my employees, they're my partners. Because if they do the work on time and I have the right relationship with them, it's going to allow me to scale. So I actually take them out for drinks, for food when I go to Sudbury, and having that confidence in them. Because for me, I still work 40 hours a week, maybe more. I do work commission-based, so it's a bit more flexible. Like we have the unlimited vacation. Typical same thing with the mortgage agent. You're working for yourself. So I do have that luxury, but it's letting people know that you can buy, building that brand, but it comes down to a relationship game. And that's essentially what it is. Like there's no secret sauce. It's just taking action. Of course, you need to build the right systems. Like right now, I'm working with a team in Dallas, Texas for an app. It's already a software system that already exists, but implementing my data into their data, where it allows the tenant to pay through an application, the landlord to have their own app, any maintenance requests. Like I want to outsource that into another individual. So just building the right systems. And that's going to take time because you need to get your assets stabilized. But a lot of these assets are going to be stabilized in the next 60 days. So right now I have, out of the 20 units that I have, 12 of the units are occupied. So the other 8 units will be hopefully before the end of the year, I will be finding tenants.
You know what? Like what I've learned here is creativity. Right. And I think creativity is at the core of your success as well. Because you, like, as you mentioned, really, you're getting these VTBs because you want to stretch your 180, 200K that you have there. And you're willing to pay a bit more. Still going to be under market value. You're not paying over market value. Still paying under market value, but getting a VTB in return. Right. And obviously that means that less capital is put out there. So huge applause to you. That's something that I haven't played around with just yet. I haven't explored VTBs. Just out of curiosity here, How do your conversations typically go? Because usually when you speak with people with BTBs, they have a significant amount of equity in the property already. It's not
Right.
someone who bought the property 2 or 3 years ago, right? Just as a sample, like if I had a property here, how would you kind of approach me with the BTB?
So I'll give you a quick example because it just happened a month ago. The one that I had under 330 initially, just a 20% down, 330,000, no condition as is. So I knew the seller wanted 360 initially. That was the initial wholesale deal that was out there. But when I went in, I started, understanding what the seller wanted. So it's all about understanding where the seller is coming from, why they're selling, and adding a value to the transaction. So when she told me that she worked at a gym due to COVID, she lost a lot of money, so she needed to liquidate her asset. The tenants weren't paying her as well. So when I went in, I'm like, you know what? I understand that you are, you wanted to sell more. You do need more money to fund a lot of the financial losses over the course of 1 year through COVID. But I would be willing to pay you $10,000 more for $340,000 if you were to hold back 10% of the mortgage in second position. But on top of that, you are going to be liquidating this asset, and this is your second asset. And I'm going to offer you a 6-month BTB term. So the remainder of the amount that is secured against the asset, you're only going to have to pay your taxes in 2022. So you're deferring your tax payment, as well as during those 6 months, you will be earning 8% interest only payment. So on top of the 340,000, you are getting other incentives. So
getting more money and interest now.
Over a course of a day or two, she was able to wrap her mind around it. And of course, I told her, I'll get my lawyers involved. It's all going to be done through legal proceedings. And you have nothing to worry about. So you need to make sure when you project BTBs, because a lot of sellers don't really know what it is. Like when you say, hey, like, can you secure a mortgage against the property? They're going to think you're a scam, right? And you never want to come out as the first thing when you're negotiating a deal. You want to make sure that you understand where they're coming from and roll it into a conversation. Same thing with the 14 units. They had 11 units on the market separately and had another 3 units. And I heard that they weren't taking any BTB offers. But what I did was I took both the triplex and the 11 units. But on my condition, I put one offer is conditional upon the other being accepted. So they had to accept my BTB because I was giving them a better deal of taking everything off their plate. I got a $200,000 below what they were asking on top of a 12.7% BTB in second position. They gave me the terms that I wanted. So it's basically understanding where the sellers are coming from, and there's no secret sauce. It's a relationship game and building it with that seller.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. A lot of people are afraid to ask. A lot of people are afraid to present those type of thoughts because it's like you feel like you might kill the deal. But that's not the case, right? You're offering someone a solution to a problem that they had. So that's a perfect way that you explained it.
Yeah, no, the only thing I was going to bring up is why go the VTB route instead of just securing private funds? Like it's essentially the same thing, right?
It is 100%. But if I were to raise private funds on my own, I'd rather use that money on another deal, right? So you can maximize the return. So if I'm already getting a seller to secure a mortgage against the property, and I also have another individual to secure a mortgage against the property on the same one, but I'd rather just secure it against another property and use it to fund more properties or more renovation. So it's just maximizing the money you can, because getting a VTB and getting a seller to be able to be in a position to lend money on a property is very minimal because there's not many sellers out there. So when you do get a VTB, you want to optimize that as to the best of your ability. Private money, there's always money coming around. And I like to secure money against a non-subject property. So once I refinance it, I'll secure private money against the asset because now I'm not touching the asset, and then now it's at 100% loan to value. Yes, it is risky. You have to do your due diligence and you need to make sure you're buying the right asset, because if a market were to take a dip, like your asset was going to be above water. So you need to make sure that you are buying the right asset with the money that you're securing.
Yeah, but you're saying you're securing it against an asset that's already been refinanced, right? Instead of securing it on the asset that you're currently buying. Because that way, then when you refinance the asset that you're currently buying, you can still use those funds to go and buy another asset without having to redo the private. So, okay, there's a lot of good nuggets in that episode, Myron. I think a lot of our guests would definitely get some good value out of it. We're running out of time, so I kind of have to ask you these 3 questions that we generally ask our guests at the end of a podcast. So what's your goal for the next 5 years? And let's talk about like from a real estate or business perspective, like what do you want to get to?
I really want to get into development, definitely purpose-built rentals. Purpose-built rentals are definitely a more superior asset class than apartment buildings. Sorry, let me repeat that. Purpose-built townhouse rentals, because there's no common area maintenance expenses. Every tenant pays their own utilities. The landlord is only paying for property management, if they have any, property taxes, property insurance, and maybe landscaping and snow removals. It's a very minimal, low operating expenses. Definitely want to build the right system to make real estate a passive income. I want to be able to travel as much as I can, and so forth. So that's basically what I want to do in 5 years, and hopefully I can just enjoy what I have.
That's awesome, man. Second question here is, if you won $10 million and you had 7 days to spend it, how would you spend it?
Number one, I'll definitely give back to the community. Definitely a few community organizations that I really want to be able to have the luxury to provide some sort of contribution. Right now, I do want to give a percentage of my passive income on a monthly basis to support a lot of those communities. So, but I need to get my assets stabilized. So I do hope I get to that stage within the next year. Number one, I really want to buy a boat. That's my one thing. I really want to buy.
You went from a car to a boat. That's hilarious.
Yeah, like that's what I really want to do. I see the guys in Windsor doing it all the time. I just want to do the same thing in Lake Ontario. Buy cars and travel. That's essentially what I will do, and definitely want to help my parents be able to retire, my siblings, as well as my extended family. So that's essentially what I'll do with the $10 million.
Okay, that's dope, man. If you could have dinner with any person, dead or alive, who would you choose and why?
I would do Kobe Bryant. Definitely a big basketball fan. I'm always a LeBron James fan growing up. Kobe Bryant was definitely my favorite, but I kind of missed his era when he was a prime in his career. But the things that he's been able to do on and off the court as a venture capitalist, his business, his endorsements, and as well as his just the way he lived his daily life and his mindset, the Mamba mentality. He woke up every day and he just contributed to what he loved to do. So, and I think that's very important in real estate. You got to find that motivation and that inspiration to wake up every day and give it your 100%. So I definitely want to meet Kobe Bryant.
All right, that's a very interesting answer. I'm not surprised though. That's the first time we actually heard Kobe. A lot of good reasons you threw there. This episode was quite phenomenal, Myron. Really appreciate you sharing all of those golden nuggets, starting to get our audience to start thinking bigger and being more creative with their deals. Because that's the big thing that we get is like, we don't have a lot of money. How do we get started in real estate? And for a lot of the time, you didn't have a lot of money, but you were still able to scale to 20 units, right? Even without a lot of money. And I'm sure even now, like money goes in and out at all times, but you still make deals happen. So that's phenomenal. If people want to reach out to you, connect with you, how could they do so?
Instagram is definitely the best way. Instagram is Myron C, MYURENC. Quite active, as well as Facebook as well. I'm definitely on the Rise Network Facebook group all the time, and definitely looking to see a lot of you guys on the live events where we have a lot of guests on. Definitely an amazing event for that Austin and Mayu provide unlimited free resources. So definitely be part of that, and we're definitely going to have more amazing events coming soon.
Yeah, looking forward to the next live Q&A you got there. I mean, the last couple ones you've hosted got tons of great feedback on. Anyways, if you guys like this podcast, make sure to share it, support it, review it, do whatever you can to get it out there. Helps bring great guests like Myron on, and helps bring great members like Myron on to help support the community as well. Until next time, everyone, invest smarter and live better. Take care, all.